The sun was setting behind the Appalachian Mountains as Jake, Emma, and their dog Max began their journey along Route 17. They had been planning this road trip for months, a perfect getaway from the stresses of work and city life. The winding roads and dense forests were a welcome change, at least at first. As darkness fell, the road seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of them. The GPS signal had long disappeared, and the radio emitted only static. Emma suggested they find a place to stop for the night, but Jake insisted they push on a bit further. They still had plenty of gas, and the map showed a small town just 20 miles ahead. But as they drove, a thick fog descended, reducing visibility to a mere few feet. Jake slowed the car, squinting to see through the murky gray. The air grew colder, and Max began to whine from the back seat. "Look, there's a light up ahead," Emma said, pointing. Indeed, a faint glow pierced the fog. As they drew closer, they saw it was an old gas station, its neon sign flickering weakly. They pulled in, relieved to find a semblance of civilization. The station was deserted, the pumps rusted, and the windows dirty. A lone attendant emerged from the shadows, his face pale and gaunt. "Need some gas?" he asked, his voice raspy. "Yes, please," Jake replied, handing over some cash. The attendant filled their tank in silence, his eyes never leaving them. Emma shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. Something about the place felt off. "Any chance there's a motel around here?" Jake asked. The attendant pointed down the road. "Keep driving, you'll find it." With a nod, Jake started the car, and they continued their journey. The fog grew thicker, swallowing the taillights of their vehicle. After what felt like hours, they finally saw a sign for the motel. The building was old, its paint peeling and the sign barely readable. They had no other options, so they parked and went inside. The lobby was empty except for a bell on the counter. Jake rang it, and an elderly woman appeared, her eyes clouded with cataracts. "Room for the night?" she asked, her voice echoing strangely. "Yes, please," Emma replied, her unease growing. The woman handed them a key without another word. Their room was small and musty, but at least it had a bed. They locked the door and settled in, trying to shake off the creeping dread that had settled over them. In the middle of the night, Emma awoke to the sound of whispers. She sat up, straining to hear. The voices were indistinct, but they seemed to be coming from just outside the door. She shook Jake awake. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Jake listened, his eyes widening as he heard the whispers too. He crept to the door and looked through the peephole. There was nothing there. "Probably just the wind," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. They lay back down, but sleep wouldn't come. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Max growled low in his throat, his fur bristling. Suddenly there was a loud knock on the door. Jake jumped up, grabbing the lamp from the bedside table as a makeshift weapon. He opened the door a crack, peering into the hallway. No one was there. "Let's get out of here," Emma said, her voice trembling. They packed their bags hurriedly and left the room, Max close at their heels. As they walked through the empty lobby, they noticed something they hadn't before. The photos on the wall depicted scenes from a different era, old cars, people in outdated clothing. But one photo made Emma gasp. It showed the gas station attendant and the old woman, looking exactly as they did now. But the photo was dated 1953. They rushed outside only to find their car gone. Panic set in as the fog closed in around them, the whispers growing louder. They ran down the road, but it felt like they were moving in circles. The fog twisted and churned, forming shapes that reached out to them with shadowy hands. Max barked furiously, but it was no use. The fog swallowed his barks, his form, and then, one by one, it claimed them too. The next morning, a new couple pulled into the gas station on Route 17. They were greeted by a pale, gaunt attendant and an eerie silence. The fog had lifted, but the whispers remained, waiting for the next travelers to venture into their clutches.